All right, welcome back. This is Daniel Parker with Parker Executive Search, conducting a mock interview for Athletic Director University. I'm proud to have Brian Hutchinson with us today from Morehead State University. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Daniel.
Glad to have you, and we're going to put you in the hot seat today and ask you 5 or 6 questions about you are an athletic director, but moving to the next level and being an athletic director at our university.
Very well.
So, first question I'd like to ask, in 3 to 5 minutes, talk to us a little bit beyond your resume, beyond your bio. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you want to be our next athletic director.
Well, first and foremost, I consider myself a student services professional, and so I've had a long career at Morehead State where I've been able to do a lot of different things, but they're all in service of our students. And when you recognize the special relationship they have within your programs, it really becomes quite clear that it's easy to serve that population. I've got kids of my own; they're of similar age, and so you kind of relate to that. You have an opportunity to make a living doing it. It's pretty special, and so the opportunity to serve your university is one that I would take very, very seriously and have great energy in doing that. I'm married. I have 2 sons, 17 and 14, and so it's a pretty special time in their lives too, and to bring them and put them as part of the university culture at your place is something that we would look forward to doing and having the chance to continue to make our programs as great as they can be.
That's great. You talked about students, and that's why we do this. What concerns, if any, do you have for student athletes in 2018?
Well, there are lots of concerns. Most of them are external. You know, they have pressures that probably you or I didn't have growing up, just given the nature of social media, the nature of people wanting a piece of who they think these students are. Yeah. At its core, our students are students just like anyone else. They just happen to participate in athletics, and so because we've recruited them to the university to do the kinds of things that we're asking them to do, we've got to provide services that ensure their success, whether it be the coaches we hire, the facilities we build, the academic support we provide. All those things are really important, but we have to recognize they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're going through some pressures that are very, very difficult. And when you add the expectations of tremendous commitment to their sport, to their craft, opportunity to have a healthy social life at college, whatever that means for them and however we help them to define that, it's pretty heady stuff. And so in a way that the athletic department is a microcosm of the rest of the university. We're providing all of the same things you do. The classroom's a little different, but we're doing the financial aid piece, the academic support piece, all of those kinds of things. And so got to be mindful of that. We've got to know that everybody's coming from a different place. We've slammed a group of people together that come from different cultures and backgrounds, and so we've got to constantly remind ourselves and our staff of that. And so my biggest concern really is just for their well-being. How do we protect them in ways that we should, at the same time allowing them to grow and develop at a really critical time in their lives? So we've got some stuff we've got to do. Our staff has to be approach that with laser focus every single day, and when we get off base, we've got to have enough in us and around us to make sure that they put us back on the right path.
College athletics is constantly evolving and changing, and you're involved at the highest level, at the NCAA level, and serve on several committees. Mm-hmm. So from a national vision and scope, we'll talk about our university vision in a second, but from a national vision, where do you see college athletics heading this year and 5 years from now?
Well, the big thing that we're spending a lot of time in right now is on the transfer piece, and we've got to get that right on behalf of our students. Our students are students first. They happen to participate in athletics. That's why they're there. Athletics is the catalyst for them to be able to go to school in most cases, or in many cases at least. And so we can't differentiate them very much from the rest of our students. It is absolutely their right to transfer and play at any school they want to play. Hopefully we're providing the kind of experience at our institution where they want to come, but also to stay. If they want to leave, then that is their prerogative, and certainly there are some things that we can do to help them do that if that's their choice. But ultimately, we don't want free agency. We don't want a situation where there's just unfettered transfer among schools, and so that's really the tough piece. It is not a right to play college athletics like it is to go to school. Once you're in school, if they've accepted you, you should be able to do that wherever you are, regardless of whether you're an athlete or not an athlete. Maybe you just go to school and you're in a fraternity, or maybe you just go to school and you have a job at night. If you want to transfer, that's up to you. The athletics piece is the other side of that. There's a significant investment that the university makes. There's a significant investment in personnel and resources that our staff has to manage. And so what's the happy medium with all that? How do we find the best space for students to do that? What's the right, I hate to keep using the word culture, but what's the right culture with which we can do that? That's the piece right now that I think we've got to absolutely get right.
Yeah. Let's talk about culture and specifically building a championship culture. So what does that mean to you? I want to win championships at my university on the fields and courts, but also in the classroom. So talk to me a little bit about what's your vision for building that type of culture at our university.
Yeah, it starts with personnel, right? So you have to ensure that you've got the right people that can help you get to reach those goals. So I think you have to collaborate first with your staff. You have to understand the institution in every respect. You have to understand what the president's motivations are, what are the sensitivities about athletics, whether it has to do with budget or how athletics represents the institution. Maybe there are some things that have occurred in the past that you have to fix. So all those things start with an understanding of that. Obviously, you have to be fiscally responsible, and you've got to be able to run your program in a way that you can sustain. Once those things are pretty clearly defined, I think you move on from there, and then you have to determine that the people you have on staff are right for that. But you have to over-communicate. You have to involve them in those decisions. And eventually, sometimes it just doesn't work out for whatever reason, and then that's where you have opportunities to impact change, hopefully positively. It's just like recruiting. You are recruiting needs, but you should always be recruiting better than what you think you have. And so from a personnel standpoint, it's the same way. When you have opportunities to do that, you're not looking for opportunities to do that. But when you do have them, you've got to get them right. And so you spend a lot of time with background checks. You spend a lot of time just talking about what your vision for the program is, whatever that is. And maybe between programs, it could be different. And so you don't want to be distracted from that. You have to be sure that you're following processes and procedures, and that people get you right as the athletic director. You have to clearly lead.
Right.
But everybody on your staff has to understand that and help you in your stead. And so over the course of time, I think my opportunity at Morehead State has been one that over a long period of time we've been able to establish that, and we've gotten it right more than we've made some mistakes, and I think that has a lot to do with just how we've approached our work every single day, and understanding what we can do on behalf of the university to share the good news about what the university's doing. Athletics is a great catalyst for that.
You talked about personnel, and I'm a believer that surrounding yourself with great people is critically important to the success of the program, and hiring great coaches. So if you can, give us a specific example, maybe an example of one that really worked out and maybe one that didn't work out, and what did you learn through those processes of hiring a coach specifically?
In our place, it's very difficult to hire sitting head coaches. Some of that has to do with our financial resources and the ability to attract them to our place. Morehead, Kentucky is not for everyone, and we've got to understand that too. Our coaches have to understand that while they recruit as well. So when it works, it can work swimmingly. We had an opportunity to hire Matthew Mitchell several years ago now to lead our women's basketball program, and we had not been very good for a number of years, and really just had to have someone to come in and inject some energy into the program, but also bring some students into the program that really believed that they could win. And so, Matthew, when he went to Kentucky, had a 30-29 record at Morehead State over the course of 2 years. That is so much better than where we've been. But more importantly, what he did was help us set the standard that we could win in that sport at our place. And so I've been really proud of his success as he's gone on, and thankful for what he did for us. On the flip side of that, sometimes you try to hire other coaches in that same mold, and they're just not the same people. Yeah. And it starts with how they want to approach the program, whether or not they have opportunities to do the same kinds of things in similar circumstances, and sometimes you miss on that. And so big personalities don't always equal big success. You've got to roll your sleeves up and get after it, because we're not going to out-resource people. We've got to outwork them in order for us to have success. And then you've got to land some recruits at the same time that get it, that want to do those same kinds of things. And so where we've made mistakes, it's in trying to hire people in the mold of others rather than being as clear and concise about the approach that you want to take.
So with Matthew's hire, what did he show you during that process that you thought that this is the right fit for our university?
He was pretty passionate about where we were. He knew that it was a program that had been down on its luck. We hadn't been to the NCAA tournament, had played in the postseason since 1979.
Yeah.
At the point that we hired him back in the mid 2000s. He was able to communicate his plan for that, I think, pretty effectively and aggressively, more so than our pool. Every hire is also pool based, right? So you can identify people and you can ask them to be part of it. But if they're not part of the pool, and so you've still got to determine based on who's available to you, what's the best fit for you. Matthew just was able to identify the key things that I thought that without us talking, he came in and said, we got to do these things to have success, whatever those were.
Right.
I agreed with that. I knew exactly where he was coming from. He understood us. He'd spent a couple years at Kentucky as an assistant at that time, and he tutored under Pat Summitt for a bit. He'd been a boys' high school coach and a girls' high school coach. He'd been at Florida. He'd been at some places where he was able to cut his teeth on something. There were times where he had to mop the floor.
Yeah.
There were times whenever he had to make sure the bus was packed. He probably even had to drive the bus at times. And so I didn't think Morehead State was the kind of place where he would come in and say, well, why don't we have people to do that? He fit us there.
Yeah.
And so I just, people that know him know that he's a super energy guy. He's full of integrity. And I just felt like he was perfect for us at the time. And he really flipped the script for us and led us to some success over a long period of time after he left.
Yeah. It's important that our athletic department is on firm financial footing. So what does that mean to you for maybe a growing our budget? We're in a little bit of an arms race here around the country from building facilities, and I'd really like to hear you specifically talk about fundraising and some examples of successes that you've had at your current institution.
So it's really critical to start with opportunity to educate the university at large about what it takes to have the success at whatever level you've chosen to have that success. So you have to be able to sustain an operating budget that allows you to do, at least at a minimum basis, the kinds of things that you have to do. You've got to travel your students to competition. They have to eat. They have to stay in safe, comfortable hotels. You have to provide certain academic kinds of support. So those things for me really are fixed costs, and they escalate over the course of time, just like as inflation would do. But so we spend a lot of time talking to people that help make budget decisions at the university about that, and make sure that at least that they're educated about what it really costs to run the program. At the same time, in the arms race piece, most of that has to do with facilities and student athlete experience. And so the university usually is not equipped to manage that. Universities like ours that are state supported have tremendous needs and facilities all over campus, and clearly from an athletics perspective, we're one piece of that, but there maybe are several other things in front of that. And so you have to have victories. You can't get into projects that you just can't support. You know that you're going to fail with those. You can't do that. So you find places where you can incrementally help. Just this past fall, we were able to identify some key donors to develop a golf practice facility for both our men's and women's golf teams. It's in honor of a coach that served us for 55 years at the university. He coached golf, I think, for 37 years. He's a tremendous friend and mentor of mine, Dr. Rex Cheney. We wanted to honor Rex. He's been retired for a few years now, and so there were a lot of people that shared that sentiment that want to honor Dr. Cheney at the same time. And so we were able to take the interest in honoring Coach and the need to support our golf programs and put those things together. And it really resonated with people, and it was a project that we were able to scale and scope and fundraise in about a 6-week period of time, which tells you got it right. It was the right project for the right donors. And so you have to continue to try to find those things. Where are your needs? How do you identify the right kinds of donors? Do you have enough of them? Don't get into projects that you can't support, because you don't ever want to have to go back to the president and say, hey, we told you we could do this and we can't, and now it's really on the university to pick this up. That's not a good spot to be.
Having an athletic department that is not out on an island or operates as a silo on our university is very important. So could you talk a little bit, you've been an athletic director for a few years, so can you talk a little bit about your working relationship with faculty and staff, your FAR, and your president or chancellor?
Yeah, I mean, it's just standard operating procedure. I mean, you at our place and in our experience, the way we're organized, we're part of a student services unit as well, and so we're very closely intertwined with admissions and financial aid and the university police and the counseling services and it gives us a sensitivity about that kind of thing, that we're not on an island. Our students live on campus. It's important for me that they do that. They are students, and so we don't. It's very easy to support them whenever they're part of the population. If you silo them off and they're part of something else, then it's a little. If I'm another student, I'm going to say, well, they're not really like us. So why are we invested in them like we should be? I think that you have to start from a place of understanding that it takes everyone to make this thing successful. Faculty rep is critically important. The president is critically important. The CFO, the foundation president, all those kinds of people have to get it. The faculty rep relationship in most cases right now is so it can make you or break you because of the pressures that universities face in terms of funding. And so you have to have one that can articulate issues on behalf of athletics. It's important for me to utilize that person in that role. Faculty or anyone that may have a similar need that we would have in terms of resources is going to be very protective of where they work every day. And so you have to have people that understand both sides of it, that are relatable for others that are not in athletics. And so I think the faculty rep right now for us is probably the most critical person we have on our campus.
As we talked about, you've been an athletic director, and I'd like to learn a little bit about, if I hire you, what's your leadership style? What will we be hiring as an athletic director? And maybe talk about a challenge or an issue that you've had to overcome. I'd like to learn who you involved when that happened and what your leadership looked like during that process.
So, I'm sort of a what you see is what you get kind of person. I'm not going to put on a false air in order to be something else other than what I am. I can't sustain that. You're going to forget that at some point,
Right.
and they're going to see something else. And so what you see here is what you'll see with me every single day. I'm going to work as hard as everyone else works. I'm not going to expect that others do some things that I'm incapable of, particularly if I have time to be supportive of that. I think that it's important for me to have to over communicate in ways. It doesn't mean that you need to know everything I know as a staff member or as a coach. There's a time and a place for that, but we ought to have regular communication where you feel comfortable with any issue coming to me, and that at some point there's some shared responsibility for how we're operating our department. If everyone's looking to me to make every single decision, then I've failed. I haven't done a very good job of that. But if we've empowered our people that we've identified and hired, we own that, right? So if we made a mistake there, that's on us, and that's typically would be on me at my place to figure those kinds of things out. So regular communication, regular meetings, regular emails, bringing in others from other parts of the university to help explain maybe new financial aid initiatives, particularly for those sports that are not headcount sports, where they're going to utilize different mixes for students as they're recruiting them. Those kinds of things I think are really, really important. In terms of issues, we had a recent NCAA infraction that dealt with some certification issues that we discovered after an audit, an APR audit, and we were able to deal with those things pretty well head on. What we did when we found out about it is we reported it. I called the president, and I called the faculty rep, and I called our general counsel and said, hey, I think we've got an issue here that we're going to have to investigate. Here's what I believe it is. It's not a failure of any person. It's that nobody overlooked it. There was no intent to break a rule, but something happened here, and because of it happened multiple times, it could be a bigger issue than what we really think it is. It's really an issue that impacts every student on our campus, except when you're in athletics, you're meeting different standards because of the NCAA rules that are in place. And so I think you have to be open and transparent about those things. Up front, I think those are the people that you have to involve immediately.
Right.
And then as it plays itself out, there will be others on our campus that will have some impact with that, and there was in our case too. And so, for me, the vindication of that is that you get to the end of it and you know that you and your staff have done everything you can to identify an issue. Once you've identified the issue, discover what the problems are. How do you fix those? How do you put processes in place so those things don't happen again? At least from the perspective of not intentionally doing that. That people make mistakes. That's going to happen. But how do you mitigate that in the best possible manner? And then ultimately, because this was an NCAA infraction, what are the penalties for that? And I think because we cooperated so clearly and effectively early, we were transparent about it. We have some issues that we needed to fix institutionally that were not not within athletics. I think we came out of that about as well as we can. It's embarrassing. You don't ever want to
Right.
deal with that, but it's not a failure. Really the victory is you identified it, you dealt with it, and it's not going to happen again. And everybody understands that from the president on down.
In 2018, what's the biggest challenge of being an athletic director now?
Yeah, at the Division I level, it's the resource piece, I think, and being able to manage expectations, not only of what the university is able to help you with, but what your fans expect,
Yeah.
what your students expect. You're recruiting people who are the best players on their team, and they're all region and all state, and in some cases all Americans, and you know, maybe they grew up in a different place and they were on other people's campuses growing up, and they saw what kinds of facilities they had or what they had in their concession stands, or this is where their students study, or this is where their students live. They just know those things. And so at a place like Morehead State, it's very difficult to be part of an arms race. And so you have to do some other things. I like to control the controllables. I think it's really important for us to recognize the things that we can do.
Right.
And we've got to be flawless with those things, because there are lots of things we can't control.
Right.
And in those things, we have to make sure that we set proper expectations for staff and students, and do the best we can. But if we control the controllables, if we provide the right kind of experiences that we have, we can overcome some of the financial challenges that we have.
Yeah.
And have success.
Well, you've had a lot of success over your career, and really appreciate you doing this. I thought it went very well. You're a real pro, and you certainly done this for a while. So, seat wasn't too hot, was it?
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Brian.
I appreciate it.
Great job.
Thank you.